everyone, thank you so much for coming. It's really exciting to see so many of you here. I'm Nick Lovell, and today I'm going to be talking to you about lighting, of course. So, just a little bit about me, not to blab on about myself too much, but the kind of stuff that I do. My bread and butter is actually video, so I shoot commercials and branded content. And I've also been published in a lot of magazines. I do a lot of work for agencies, shooting models, that sort of thing. So why I'm here today is because I am obsessed with lighting, and I absolutely love it. So this is me with lighting. I literally lay awake at night thinking about lighting ratios and modifiers and everything. When I go to the mall, I take pictures of all the displays in the mall, and I look at catch lights in the eyes. And for those of you that don't know what catch lights are, the catch lights are actually the reflections of the light that's being used in the model's eyes. So by looking at this catch light, kind of where it is in the eye and how big it is, this looks like an umbrella, you can kind of dissect the lighting that you see somewhere out in a magazine or on a billboard or something like that. So that is kind of my hobby. I kind of go through the mall, and instead of shopping, I will just look at images. How many of you have tried lighting diagrams or lighting setups that you've seen on the internet? Anyone? Oh, good. So we've got a lot of newbies. This is awesome. So a lot of my journey and a lot of why I like to teach is that I had a lot of trouble with that for a number of years. I would go online, I would find a lighting setup, I would find a lighting tutorial video, and be like, okay, I'm going to get this exact brand of light, I'm going to get that exact modifier, I'm going to put it right here. Take the picture, looks nothing like what the other photographer got. And so I found out that really that can get you about halfway there. But then the rest of it you really have to kind of do for yourself and learn and experiment and fail and try again until you really lock a lot of this stuff in. This one photographer who's absolutely amazing, Clay Cook, his lighting setups drove me mad. Like I have 2 full shoots where I was just like, dang it, I can't get the ratio between that soft lighter and the silk to work. It just didn't look right. Finally nailed it, but it took a lot of practice. And so one of the things I'm going to be talking about a lot is getting your hands dirty with this. And one of the things that I really want to instill in everyone today is that you continue with this in some form after today. You take the knowledge that I'm giving you today, that I'm talking about, and you go and you actually practice it as much as possible, because that's the way you're going to get good at lighting. A little bit about how today is going to work. There's going to be a lot of theory today. That's what the class is mostly about, is lighting theory. So I'm going to give you the concepts, I'm going to give you the science, if you will, behind it, and a little bit about what makes for good or bad lighting. It's super duper subjective, like one person's bad lighting is another person's good lighting, but there's certain philosophies that I have about lighting that I'm going to share with you on what makes lighting appropriate, I guess I would say, for what you're trying to achieve or the story you're trying to tell. I'm going to show you some of my setups that I use a lot or that I'm comfortable with. Again, you might not be able to take the setups right away and go out and shoot. You might if you have a little bit of time to experiment with them beforehand. But what I am going to do is I'm going to show you the choices guiding those setups. And what that'll help with is instead of just saying, oh yeah, put a beauty dish here, put the model there, I can say, okay, this is what happens when you put the light here. That screws it up because it's pointing in this direction. Or when we have the light way back here, you're going to get this kind of look. When the light is closer, you'll get this kind of look. So that when you screw up or when it doesn't look right, you have a little bit of a sense of what to look for to make it look right or to change it to match what's in your head. And basically, lighting diagrams, one of the reasons why they're not always reliable is they can't tell the whole story of what's going on in there. There are a lot of variables that you don't see when you're looking at a lighting diagram. How high are the ceilings? Is light bouncing off white walls like we have in here? Is it bouncing off a white cyc? All of these factors can dramatically change the way that a light looks. The environment, even if you have like a funky colored wall or something, all of that can change what the final effect is. So that's why you need to take all those things into account, and hopefully, as you get more comfortable, you'll start to know and watch out for those sorts of things. So let's talk about ways in which we can kind of share a common language about light. What are the ways in which photographers generally talk about the basic characteristics of light? So the 4 that I'm going to focus on today, and arguably there might be more if you get really granular, but the 4 that I'm going to focus on: quantity, color, direction, and quality. So the quantity is pretty self-explanatory. It's how much light you have. In some cases, it can also be a ratio of how much light you have. How much is coming from this light versus how much is coming from this light, or how much is coming from the sun versus how much is coming from the sand bouncing up into the model. Color, that can either be thought of in terms of your white balance on your camera. Is your camera balanced correctly for the type of light that you're using? Is it balanced for outdoor daylight? Is it balanced for strobe? Is it balanced for shade? Or it can also be used for effect. I'll show you one image that I came upon a little later that uses both color and direction of light to tell a really cool story. So we'll take a look at that. Direction, where the light is coming from, and we know that by the directions on the shadows of the subject. So the nose creates a shadow, the chin creates a shadow, and then also the catch light, we can kind of see where the light is coming from when we analyze a photograph. But direction has a huge amount to do with how we see that subject. Do we, have it right in front so it covers up the pores and makes the skin look a lot smoother? Or is it coming from the side where it kind of rakes across the skin and shows the character of the model? Those are some things that direction informs. Quality, and when I mention quality, I'm not talking about is the light good or bad. It's actually how hard or soft the light is. And we'll discuss what that means in just a second. So because quantity and color are somewhat kind of self-explanatory, the 2 things that I'm going to focus on here with you today are direction and quality, because these are the things that you're going to be using most basically to create your lighting story and your lighting setups. So one of the first things I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to do a little bit of a demo with our model. And Erica, if you could actually, we'll use this. We'll bring this front and center. Cool. Have a seat here for me. And it is my hope that you'll be able to see this. What I'm going to demonstrate here is kind of how light plays on a model's face. And you can see that as I come around, the character changes. Can everyone see where you are? Awesome. So you'll notice that as we get to about here, things start to look a little weird. And the reason for that is we as human beings are used to light coming from above. The sun is outside, it's never below us. You don't walk into someone's home and you have a bunch of uplights coming up at you. The old by the campfire thing. The reason why it looks creepy is because we're not used to light coming from here. So one of the first general rules I say is to try to keep your lighting between, if you imagine a clock, between 10 and 2. So you're never directly from the side with the nose shadow going straight to the side, and you're definitely never below that with the nose shadow going up. Another thing to watch out for is as this starts to get further and further back, we get raccoon eyes. So we always like to see the eyes. All of these things, I should also caveat, are aesthetic choices. When I'm talking about raccoon eyes and I say that's bad, the film The Godfather had a ton of raccoon eyes and is iconic for that reason. But if you're thinking you want to create a glamour portrait or something very simple, and you're out in the sun and the sun is here, you might want to watch out for those raccoon eyes and do something about it, whether moving the model, putting a reflector underneath, that sort of thing. So I'm also going to show you really quick, there are a few basic lighting patterns that photographers use to talk about how they light. These 3 photos are from a photographer named George Hurrell, and there are more lighting patterns than this, but again, these are the three that I'd like to focus on today just because we have limited time. The first is butterfly lighting, also called paramount lighting, and that's because of the shape that the nose shadow makes under the nose. It kind of looks like a butterfly. So that's directly in front of the model. Loop lighting is when we start to get the light a little bit to the side of the model, and then the nose shadow forms a loop, just like that. And then finally, as we get a little bit more to the side, we get what's called Rembrandt lighting. And the key characteristic of Rembrandt lighting is that it has this shadow under the eye. The nose shadow actually connects with the cheek shadow and forms that triangle. And each of these has kind of a conventional way that it's used in photography. Butterfly lighting is used in a lot of beauty photography. If you see makeup ads or skincare ads, that sort of thing, you'll see a lot of butterfly lighting. Loop lighting is a very common portrait style lighting. And then Rembrandt is usually used to kind of bring drama into it. It gives people kind of a dignified feel. I'm going to show you a little bit later. There's a current fashion campaign right now that has Rembrandt lighting, and it's just really, really nice. So if you want to come forward again, as we study the shadow that's created under the nose. Okay, so we start in the center. We have butterfly. We come to the side a little bit, and I'm actually going to come this way because you can see the shadow better. And we create that loop under the nose. And then as we come over here, we create that triangle under the eye. So we start here, we have butterfly lighting. Over here a little bit, loop. And then we come over here and we create that triangle for Rembrandt lighting. So butterfly, coming over here, loop, and actually, another thing is if you start to get over the top too much, that nose shadow starts to go down into the mouth, which is a little unsightly. So we're just going to go right here, so we create that loop, and then around this way, we create that triangle for Rembrandt light. Cool? Excellent. Thank you very much. So now we're going to talk about quality. And quality, like I said earlier, is basically whether your light is hard or soft or somewhere in between. This is the same model taken in the same room at the same day, but in one she's in direct sunlight, and the other she's on the opposite side, so she's just getting basically the sky coming through the window. And when we talk about hard or soft, we're talking about the edge of these shadows around the nose, around the chin. And as you can see here, there's almost no gradation between the shadow on the nose and the highlight. It doesn't, gradually move from one to the other. It's pretty stark. And that area between highlight and shadow is called the shadow transfer area. And that's what we look at when we look at whether a light is hard or soft. On this side, you can see that the shadow is so soft, it's almost hard to tell where shadow and highlight begin. So that's more the extreme side. We know that right here, it's pretty light, and it gets dark over here, but it's hard to even kind of pinpoint where those shadows start and end. So that's very, very soft light. So what makes a light hard or soft? In the most basic terms, if a light source is super far away or super small, that's going to create a hard light. So if you think about the sun, one of the key things about this is that distance away usually makes a light harder. So the sun is huge. I don't know how many Earths you can put inside the volume of the sun. But it's so far away that we can basically cover it with our thumb. So the actual size of that light is about this much. And that creates those hard shadows. On the other hand, if we take a light source and we bring it closer, or we make it bigger, then the light gets softer. Again, coming back to the sun, if you think about the sun on a clear day, you have just no clouds in the sky and the sun is directly hitting. That's a very hard light. As the clouds start to come in, the entire sky becomes the source. So you've got this gigantic source that creates a soft light. So how we have control over how hard or soft a light is we can either, one, diffuse it, or we can bounce it. So we have things like this that we can use to diffuse a light. This is called a diffusion panel. It's collapsible, it's portable, it's pretty easy. And we can take this, we can put this in between the light and the subject and create a soft light. Instead of that little sun being the light source, this whole thing becomes the light source. And relative to the model, or the subject, this is a lot larger than the sun from here. Or we can do the opposite, we can bounce. We can take a light, we can point it at a wall, we can point it at a ceiling, or we can use a bounce board like this. There's also other collapsible reflectors that are just white instead of translucent like this one. And basically, all the light modifiers that we use when we use strobe photography or strobe lighting work on one or both of these principles. So for instance, we have a beauty dish, which I'm going to take down and demonstrate for you really quick. So this is a beauty dish, and it works all on the principle of bouncing. The idea is that there's actually no direct light hitting the model if it's positioned correctly. So the flash unit is in here. It puts the light out, which hits this, and then gets reflected into the rest of the dish so that it's all bounced and made a little bit bigger. Again, it's kind of a mix between a hard and a soft light because it's made it bigger, but it's also not such a huge source in comparison to a human that it would make a very soft light. You know, these lights over here with someone very close to them, because they're much larger, would be a lot softer. We have soft boxes, which are another popular choice for a lot of photographers to use. And these work primarily on the principle of diffusion. These sections of diffusion material in a softbox are called baffles. So this is a second baffle. This is the inner baffle. And then as you can see, the light would come through there. And there's a little bit of bounce going on with this silver reflective material, but mostly it's diffusing the light using these baffles and making the light bigger. An umbrella is a really simple way to increase the size of a light. And these are a special type of umbrella that we call soft lighters. It's actually based on the brand of that type of umbrella. So that one is actually doing two things at once. It is bouncing the light into the umbrella and then diffusing it in front. Of course, you always can use a bare bulb or just the little reflector that comes in the light. And this will create a very hard light on your subject. If you get this high enough and far enough away in a studio, you actually can create the feeling of sunlight because this is a pretty small source.